Now let's turn our attention now to the latest installment in the rumored Greek exit drama unfolding in the Eurozone. Now, Greek citizens are reportedly pulling cash out of banks ahead of Sunday's election, which has sparked fears of a Greek exit from the Eurozone if the leftist Syriza party emerges triumphant. Let's look at the different scenarios now with Brian Kantor, strategist at Investec Asset Management, who joins us live from Cape Town. Brian, thank you for your time this evening. When one goes through the news flow every single day, you take one view and then the next day it comes in different again, and then the next day it's something else. Like today, for instance, we've got this guy, the leftist who is leading the Greek party, that says it will tear up all these austerity measures in Greece. Now he is talking about staying in the euro even after he wins, and Europe essentially needing to keep Greece inside the euro. When you look at it though, do you see the Greeks blinking, or is Europe going to blink? And if neither blink,
yes,
where will Greece end?
Yeah. Well, they cancelled the polls, so they weren't allowed to run polls, the opinion polls, 2 weeks before the election. So it's not known how the votes are being allocated or will be allocated. So that's an uncertainty, though. It does appear that a great majority of Greeks want to stay in the European Union. They don't want to leave the European Union, and that clearly makes a lot of sense, because if they leave, it's forever. And if they stay in, they might well benefit from changes in the European Union itself. That is, the European Union may well become more integrated. A fiscal union might well benefit Greece, in that Germany would then be fully committed to the European Union. So they don't want to leave, but they also don't want to face the full adjustments that they've been called upon to make. And as yet they haven't really made.
Yeah, but Brian, at the same time,
so we'll have to wait and see, I'm afraid.
Yeah, sure. But the numbers that we're seeing suggest that the Greeks are voting with their money. We are seeing, as one of the stories that we read earlier today, suggesting that they are pulling money out of Greek banks. And in fact, the numbers that I saw coming out of Bloomberg suggest that as much as, I think, 10 billion has gone out of Greece into, I suppose, other European countries or into the dollar. So they suggest that the Greeks don't have faith that even if a government comes that wants to create a new currency, they want to be part of it.
Yes, well, if you had money in a Greek bank and money was denominated in euros, and there was a good chance that Greece would leave the euro and replace euros with drachmas, the rate of exchange of drachmas for euros would certainly decline. So it wouldn't be 1-to-1. It might be you might see a 50% devaluation. So any Greek with a deposit in a Greek bank and a banking account somewhere else in Europe is bound to want to transfer their deposits to a German bank or a Swiss bank, which they've been doing for some time. I mean, it's almost surprising that so many deposits have stayed with Greek banks. Now then, what do the Greek banks do faced with a deposit withdrawal? Well, they've had to borrow from the ECB. They've had to cash in assets in exchange for cash to replace the deposits they're losing. So the Greek banks have been shrinking. And that's clearly not good for the Greek economy. So one way or other, Greece want to resolve these uncertainties. That's true, incidentally, of Spanish bank deposits also.
Kelly, you want to come in?
I mean, if you had deposits in a bank of which there was some chance that those deposits would lose value, well, you'd certainly want to transfer them to another bank if you had an account with another bank.
Yes, Professor. Could I just ask a question? Something you alluded to earlier. Between the two choices of the Greek exit and the status quo, isn't the compromise a European fiscal union where Germany takes over the finances of first of all, it underwrites and guarantees the finances of Europe, but then takes responsibility for how they run. Isn't the fiscal union the outcome with Germany being the top dog in that?
Yes, well, Germany would have to agree to that. And Germany doesn't necessarily trust the other European partners to play by the rules. Well, Greece certainly didn't play by the rules, nor in fact did Germany or France at an earlier stage, which was setting a very bad example. Remember the 3% deficit rule, which was more honoured in the breach than the observance. So yes, it is very much up to Germany to put its credit behind Europe, and the solution would be a fiscal union of the American kind. So you have a federal government with taxing and spending powers under control of German sort of type rules and tastes.
Yeah.
And you have states then, as you have in America, who can go broke, who have to balance their budgets, and can be allowed to go broke. So that would be the solution. But we seem very, very far from that at this stage.
Brian,
and that's the big issue. You had a currency union before you had a fiscal union. And in the US, if you go to the history of the US, you clearly had
It's the other way around.
fiscal union before you had a currency union.
Yeah.
So Europe has got itself into a terrible state because it really, for emotional, ideological reasons, went for this currency union and really didn't see the dangers that they currently face.
with the cart before the horse, Brian, that you have just mentioned, effectively, we have a Europe in which some euros are more equal than other euros. And you see pricing of risk too reflecting that, in that some governments are worth more than other governments. Is it likely that you could only restore a sort of commonality to a one risk Europe, if you will, if you have this US type scenario? And if that is not on the cards for the very reasons that you've just mentioned, ideological and emotional and so forth, what is the other option open to Europe in your view?
Well, the option would be a breakup of the monetary union, which almost certainly would mean a breakup of the European Union and the common trade area, which is so important. So there's a lot at stake. If you think of Germany, its economy does depend to a very important degree on the health of the rest of Europe. They trade intensively with the rest of Europe, as the rest of Europe trades with Germany. So there's a lot of interest in keeping the union going and the common market going. But if you were to have a fiscal union, you've got to have the same fiscal practice in all over Europe, and that really is the issue. I mean, if you look at Spain, why is Spain in trouble? Because its economy has faltered on the back of a housing crisis. Its economy grew strongly with construction activity, housing building and all that, and it's fallen apart because the housing market has deteriorated as much as it has. And I mean, if you want to go to Ireland, the same story. House prices in Ireland are 50% off their peaks.
Yeah,
So
Brian.
That's a terrible situation.
Brian, we're
for
running
banks
out of time.
to have to deal with. In fact, they can't.
We're running out of time, but I just wanted to explore this idea further of this, two-speed Europe, if you like. There's an article I read today from somebody called Robert Hockett. He's law professor at Cornell Law University. He's a Bloomberg columnist. And he's speaking of perhaps the solution being the creation of two central banks managed by one board. One for the North, which, as Mark has spoken about, caters for that other type Europe that is apparently valued more than the other Europe, and one for the South. And then this perhaps working eventually towards unifying policies between the two. Is that a solution? Do you think that would work, or is just way too radical and politicians would never accede to that?
No. No, I think you want a monetary and banking union with a central bank fully committed to protecting all the banks within its area of responsibility. I think we've seen some of that. The European Central Bank has kept the system afloat with lots of cash. But the Germans are clearly reluctant to put their own credit behind, say, Spanish or Italian credit. They want the Spaniards and the Italians to get it right, you know, pretty much on their own. They will back Spanish banks. I mean, the big move over the weekend was an announcement by European leadership that they would put 100 billion euros to recapitalize Spanish banks. Now that's an important step, though what we lack at the moment is details of how that bailout is to happen. So the market was encouraged for a bit by that decision, but it wants details.